Whilst filming at the Crewe Heritage Centre, we met and interviewed many fantastic people who very kindly took the time to talk with us for the Story of Steam project. William Andrew, the trustee volunteer at the centre, had not only driven steam engines but also worked on diesel and electric trains. We soon found out that he had also driven the Advanced Passenger Train, also known as the APT, whilst the prototype was being tested. He very kindly let us interview him about what it was like driving the APT and what was involved. It was decided to put this together in a short video along with the main documentary, A Story of Steam.
Well, to go from steam to diesel to electrics to the APT was something spectacular as far as the drivers were concerned, because you'd got the increase in speed. When this was in the test mode, we could actually go up to 140 mile an hour in certain places. The power, this is the power controller, and you've got the 6 positions on the power controller plus a boost in case you were on a steep gradient and it wouldn't actually move away in notch 1 or 2. You could go up to boost, but that was only for about 20 seconds. After 20 seconds then the traction motors were getting rather hot, so the engineers wouldn't let you hold it in boost for more than 20 seconds. I've stood at Scout Green, which is halfway up Sharp, on the 1 in 70 gradient, and started off the train going right away to notch 7, and the computer system on the train would actually regulate the power to allow me to move away from 0 and go over the top of Sharp doing about 80 mile an hour. Easy. With a steamer with the same weight, you'd probably go over the top of Sharp 25 mile an hour. In fact, there's a restriction over the top of Sharp now at the moment, which has been there for quite a long time, and the Pendolinos have to brake to go over the top of 80. So you can, the comparison between steam and diesel. The diesel will probably go over Sharp 40 mile an hour. So the comparison speed-wise and time-wise is vast difference between the modern traction and the steamers. This is the brake which was applied into an initial system which initiated a supply of hydrokinetic fluid into the axles, because on this the braking system down to 20 miles an hour was operated by a fluid system with paddles in the axles which reacted against the water pressure, if you want to call it that. But it's an excellent brake as far as the driver was concerned. And down to 20 miles an hour. After 20 miles an hour, then the electrical system initiated the friction brake, so you go back to the normal brake block system at 20 mile an hour. That's the auxiliary supply light which told the driver that the auxiliary system was working, which supplied the air conditioning, the lighting system, the microwaves. If that light went out, then he had a circuit breaker which he had to check. The next one is the traction fault. If he got a fault with any of the traction motors, then that would light up, and he'd have to isolate traction motors in sequence, i.e. if he thought it was number 1, he'd isolate number 1, come back here, try for power. If the light didn't light, then he knew he'd isolated the fault, it was on number 1 traction motor. And this was all instigated during training. The pass alarm light, that lit if a passenger pulled the communication cord to stop the train, that would light. The override button was there in case it was pulled inside a tunnel or on a viaduct. he could actually override the application to get the train out of a tunnel or off a viaduct, because it would be dangerous to have passengers getting out of the train in a tunnel or on a viaduct. These two, this one here, sorry, was the speed restriction indicator. In the track there were transponders, and as he approached the transponder, the speed would register up on here what that transponder was sending out. It would come up on the screen. So that would, if it was 100 miles an hour, he'd go over the transponder, 100 miles an hour would be registered in the screen here. At the commencement of that restriction, then the white light would apply. If he wasn't down to that speed, then the brake would automatically bring him down to that without him touching anything. Obviously you've got the pantograph up button. This one would tell you whether you'd got power from the overhead. If that light went out, then you'd lost power from the overhead, and then you've got the pan down button. Traction power was similar to the that one there. So you've got traction power light, wheel slip light. If you were starting off on a wet rail or a greasy rail and the wheels started to spin, that would initiate that light there, and he'd just ease off the power. Traction over temperature, that obviously explains itself. If one of the traction motors started to overheat, then that would come up, it'd ease off the power. And what it could be, on the traction motors, you've got traction motor blowers, which blow cool air onto the traction motors. If they stopped, then that light would come in because they'd be getting over temperature. You've got the same thing on the diesels, traction motor blowers, which blow cool air onto the traction motors to keep them cool. This is the master controller, which allows the driver to put it into forward gear, middle gear or reverse gear. In the lock position, if that is locked, you can't move any of these. That's locked. The blue button is the AWS warning system cancel button. If the signal was showing a caution signal, that's a yellow or two yellows, or approaching the red, the horn would sound, and he had on this 2 to 3 seconds to press that to cancel out the system. If he didn't cancel that, or he went over the time, then the brakes would automatically apply. The control APT, the capped, that's control APT system, that was another initiation of a brake. If he got a control APT warning, which was another transponder in the track, if he didn't cancel, again he'd get a brake application. When we were training drivers on this, what we used to tell them to do was press them both at the same time, because it was difficult to tell which one was sounding. They didn't sound at the same time, they would sound separate depending on which transponder you'd gone over. So we used to go like that and press them both, because 3 to 5 seconds is not much. If you got a brake application, you come to a stand and you had to stand for 60 seconds and the brake would automatically release. But if it was a problem with the train, obviously the guard would have been in communication, because you got communication with the guard by telephone. This was to the guard, or train managers as they call them now, and there was a bell code to use. 6 meant you wanted to talk to the guard. There's the different switches and isolating handles for the APT system and the capped system. These buttons across here are just to control the auxiliaries. That's all they're for. Starting the generator up and putting the air conditioning on, or whatever the guard wanted on. Obviously you've got all the switches here for your lights, cab lights, headlights, tail lights. That red one is the emergency to apply the brake. So if for any reason the driver didn't apply the brake, or he applied the brake and it didn't work, he could push the emergency button and that was a full emergency brake application. And once that had been initiated, it couldn't be released until he come to a stand. This little indicator here with the hatch is to tell the driver that the parking brake was either on or off. This is for your windscreen wipers. It's a one-sweep wiper. But the biggest problem with trains going fast is that the windscreen gets covered in flies. It's the best fly catcher in the world, a windscreen. Obviously you've got a window washer. You can operate a washer which put a fluid on. But with flies, the trouble is they smear as the wiper goes across. So eventually what they did, they used to have windscreen people to wash the windscreens at places like Preston and Carlisle. The driver had to get onto the guard to wire the control that he wanted his windscreen washing at Preston or Carlisle. And they'd come along with a brush and special fluid to clean the flies off. And that's about it, I think, as far as... But behind the driver here is a generator, diesel generator, which was used when the train had to be hauled away from the wires. It's a diesel generator which supplied the auxiliary supply for, again, the air conditioning, the lights and the microwaves. Anything that needed electricity away from the wires was fed from that generator. But from a driver's point of view, this was the best thing out, from a driver's point of view.